Hello and welcome back to another episode of All the Hype. I am Yo Barrio. Today with me again as co-host, the one and only MannySimoneCards. How's it going, Manny?
Hello, Barry. Hello, everyone else. Excited to be back here with you guys. And we have another new guest, exciting guest, someone who has a very interesting life they live, and excited to get into it and learn more about them.
I am excited to get into it as well as learning, a lot of learning today. So make sure you grab your notepads and get ready to learn from the wonderful Rahul the Flea Reddy. How's it going?
Doing good, guys. Thank you for having me.
Now, this is All the Hype, where we mentioned before, it's basically a deep dive into the life of our guest. Today, that's you, the Flea. But for the ones who might not know who you are, just give a little quick introduction.
Hey guys, I'm Rahul. I have been playing Pokemon / loving Pokemon since I was probably like 3 or 4 years old. Like many of you guys, Pokemon's been a big part of my life. And when I was about 13 or 14, I jumped back into the competitive scene and kind of dove headfirst in. And I've been playing since then. I'm almost 26 now, so it's been a while.
Wow, that is a long time.
And I made my, I guess, debut feature, whatever, on TikTok about a year ago, just because I always liked watching and scrolling, and I was like, I could also, make Pokemon content and get along with a bunch of people and make friends.
And you said you got into, we'll start off with the competitive TCG,
Sure.
Because you said you started that at a young age of 13.
Yeah.
A lot of people, when they get into Pokemon, it's mainly for the collecting of it and or the video games. What was your interest in actually the competitive TCG of it?
So this is like back when I was in like middle school, that era. It was like a weird time where playing video games or doing any of this stuff would get you kind of like made fun of, that kind of deal. So I would always kind of keep it secret that like I was like a huge Pokemon fan, and like I didn't want people to know. And this is right when like Heart Gold, Soul Silver, I think, came out. And so I had my Poké Walker that I would bring to school with me. And I remember it like fell out of my pocket one day. So I ended up making a couple friends that way. And one of the guys was like, hey, I ended up finding, this is back when we would use like Gmail or like email to communicate because no like texting features existed. And I remember he like messaged always like, my mom found all my old cards, blah, blah, blah. We should start playing again. And we kind of got together. I found some of my old stuff. Obviously, they're all beaten up because I didn't take care of them as a kid. And we made up our own rules, did whatever. And we like looked up, like we just like Googled like where to play, like that kind of thing. And there was a local library near us. And we started, going there every Friday after school. We'd grab like some snacks, go play. And there was a couple of people there that were kind of telling us like, hey, you guys know that there's these things called pre-releases where you can go and pay like $30 and they'll give you like 8 packs and you get to, play the newest set. And we went to that for our first time. I believe my first pre-release was Triumphant. And from there, we like learned about like the people there started talking to us about like city championships and all these other things. And so I started going to a couple of things locally, and some things kind of snowballed in a really weird manner. And I ended up at nationals by myself at a very young age. And I was like, how am I here? Why did my dad let me go? And I basically like ended up going with some middle-aged dude and his son because they had an extra spot in the car that I had talked to like 3 times. And my dad was cool with it. So I ended up doing that. And after I basically met a bunch of people that loved Pokemon as much as I did, which was a foreign concept to me at the time, I kind of fell in love with the community.
So when your parents first found out about you playing Pokemon and then you bringing up the idea that you wanting to play in a tournament, what was their reaction to you?
So being very like East Asian, like Indian, my parents were not happy about it. I think their general idea was, as long as it doesn't like interfere with my schooling, and like if it wasn't like I had to get up at like 6 a.m. or something like that to take me somewhere, they'd be okay with it. Because around this time I'd kind of started like petering off of like high school sports, more or less. Like I would run track, but besides that, like I didn't have that like weekly youth soccer or whatever, like, the sports we used to play as kids. So I'd kind of try to get rides wherever I could from people. And there was times where I'd like take like the bus or like the metro or something like that to get where I needed to be. So my parents, like, despite them trying to be like, we're not going to take you, we're not going to let you go, they were like kind of okay with it. But up until like I graduated high school, they were a little bit more hesitant to let me go to something bigger or like travel as much. So the moment I got to college, I kind of blew the door wide open and went wherever I could. I would sit in cars for like 16 hours if I could to go.
The first tournament, did that cost you money to get in? That first one you went to?
So way back in the day, probably all the way up to, I want to say 2015, small tournaments were completely free of cost. Like everything up to like regionals. So you could go to like your local card store or whatever, enter. Prizing was like, I believe it was given to the organizers from Pokemon. So like they didn't have to do anything out of pocket. Nowadays, I think it's different. So Pokemon would send them like a booster box for first, like half a box for second, like a couple of like play mats, medals, whatever. So all the organizers had to do was kind of do the event, and like card stores would happily let people do it because they'd get people coming in, business, yada yada. So the first ever one I went to was at this like strip mall card store, and I remember there were so many people that because I was in a younger age division, we had to sit on the floor and play.
You had referees there and everything?
Yep, we had judges. The judges were not great like 10 years ago either, but obviously as time goes on and more people come into the community, we've had a lot of people who used to be like ex-players transfer over to like that judging side, or even get hired by Pokemon, etc.
Can we so on the competitive side, because you're an actual ranked player, right?
Yes, sir.
How's that journey? What was that journey like? And how does one become a ranked player?
So in as simple as I can put it, every tournament you go to that's officially run by Pokemon, you can earn championship points. And these championship points will add up across the course of your 1-year season. And the primary function of them is if you can get a certain number, you'll qualify for the World Championships. But then based on certain like rankings throughout the season, if you're in the top 16, which I usually am, besides sometimes I missed because of school and stuff, but most of the time I've been, I kept my ranking. Those players, top 16 North America, top 22 Europe, top 8 Oceania, and top 8 Latin America, will get paid trips to go to the next international championship, which made it super easy for me as a college student to travel, because by keeping my ranking and like, placing pretty well at some events here and there, I was, able to get a free trip to Australia, free trip to Brazil, that kind of stuff across the board. And then at the end of the year, those players will also earn a full day buy, which I think is like, it's equivalent to like a playoff buy. It's ridiculous. The World Championships is a 3-day affair, and I would get to start in day 2, which is already a huge advantage.
Oh, wow. I mean, I didn't know about any of this stuff. Oh, dang, Barry. I'm learning some stuff today.
Yeah, that's why a lot of the time the ranking is a little more important than people give it credit for, just because you don't have to do all this, right? You can get to your like 500 points. That's what the requirement was, and chill out like that. You could probably take it very easy. You could go to some locals, maybe travel once or twice in the year, and you could cap that 500 off pretty easy if you're a pretty decent player. But I always try to go the extra mile, or I did in college at least. I just got a job, and the season was midway when Corona all happened. So I don't know in what capacity I'll go hard again. I'd like to keep going, but obviously job pending.
Speaking of COVID, because you also talked about, holding your rank, how has COVID affected a competitive TCG game?
So they basically like shut down events, like formal events, and they've had a couple of like online like circuits. I want to say like Players Cups is what they called them. A couple of team challenges to get like locals involved as well. But they didn't really do a great job, I want to say, at like keeping it going, because I think the last time we had something was back in June, and it's January of the next year.
That was an online event.
Yeah, they had a couple of online events. They had it going for a little bit. There wasn't too much on the line. Like they offered like travel stipends into cash eventually. Like it was like you'd have to qualify out of the 256 in your region into like a top 16 bracket into something, and only first place would get $5,000, which is like it's an alluring number, but there's a lot of work that needs to be done to get there.
Mm-hmm.
But besides that, there hasn't been anything that's been affecting our rankings since everything came back. And obviously things are getting a little bit worse again with Omicron. But if we're supposed to start as we're supposed to in March, mid-March, tournaments will kick off. They'll just unfreeze the rankings and we'll be on our way. They aged up a couple of the younger kids, which does throw the numbers for a wrench a little bit, but I don't think it affects too much.
What does that mean? Aged up the kids?
Oh yeah, I'll just clarify that. Yeah, there are 3 age divisions, so it's not like I'm going to show up and play against like 6-year-old Billy.
Aw, why not? It'll toughen them up.
Yeah, they do an 11 and under age division, 12 to 15, maybe 16 now age division, and then 17 and up basically. So once you're 17, it's like you're off to the wolves kind of deal. And the pricing is actually the same across the board. Like what I can win, the 10 and under division can also win. So I actually know a kid who's been playing for a couple years now, since like the big money circuit's been introduced, and his parents were telling me that because also when you're younger, if you're under 18, you can take the money as a scholarship as opposed to cash, which lets you avoid taxes.
Little loophole.
So these little kids have been like, one of the kids I know has like won all these like regionals that are like $5,000 cash prizing into like the 25K cash prizing. Like he's sitting on like probably 6 figures of winnings, and he's not even like 12, which is nuts. That's not even including the booster boxes and all that stuff, but I'm sure he just opens them.
Yeah. Speaking of cards, because this is a question that I don't know, because I'm like completely oblivious to the card game. In these competitions, do you roll with more than one deck? Is there a how does that work?
So you before you go to the event, you have to lock in your 60 card deck, no more no less, before you like not show up, I guess, but you have like a deadline online. They've gotten better with it. Used to you have to do like paper deck lists, and there would people would make errors and stuff all the time. It was a huge mess. But now they have implemented like an online system, so you can go online. I can just go to this website. I do it on my phone usually. I can type in, professor research, and I can put in the specific art as well, so there's no confusion. And I'll select my 60 card list. I can edit it as many times as before a certain time period, and I just hit submit. And that is the list that I'm locked into for the weekend. Doing well or doing bad, like you'll know a little bit, like as soon as like round one hits, sometimes I'm like, okay, I made a decent call, or I really like did not read the room correctly today. Like I can tell which one's going to be a this might be a good run for me today, or I'm lucky if I do well. If not, I'm gonna go hit the bar.
Oh man, and you can't change a card out.
Not a single thing. You're locked and loaded for the full weekend.
And before the game starts, did the judges like check every card in your deck?
There's a couple of like random deck checks that'll occur here and there, especially if you're winning. They'll sometimes just like ask to like pull you aside and like grab your. They'll just like, as soon as your game is done, before you can do anything, they'll just like be like, we're doing you a random deck check, and they'll just take you to like a table. They'll have you sit there while they check your deck, and that'll be going on like periodically through the day. So there is a good chance if you're winning, you could be checked like 2 or 3 times in one day. And if you're going on stream specifically, they will check you 100%.
Well, like in the video games, how you got the Pokemon trainer, Pokemon gym leaders, how they're known for certain Pokemon and I guess Pokemon type within the TCG competitive. Are there people like known for using this style deck, so you kind of have an idea of what to play?
Yeah. There's like people will always say like a style doesn't exist or whatever, but anything you do in life, everyone's got their own like take on it, right? Like you kind of have your way of how you want to do stuff regardless. So for example, for me, I don't like playing anything slow paced really. Like I like to take control and like go ham from the beginning. But there are like a few players who are known for like, they're very control, like grindy, like we're going to take you down to the wire style of play. Some players who just always play decks that'll win games, but they're always going to be like really close, scrappy games, like stuff like that. Whereas like some of my decks choices, for example, I'll know the moment I sit down into my matchup, like a type weakness. Like I'll know like either I got this or it's going to be really hard, like off the bat. And I like to take those risks because I think if you want to win a big event, you have to sacrifice something somewhere. You can't like take 50, like you can't say I'm going to have a decent shot against everything and rely on myself to play well, because we start the day at like 8 a.m. and you're playing 9 rounds of best of 3 that are 50 minutes long each. That's day one. So it's going to be like 9-10 p.m. by the time we're done. My brain is jelly by the end of the day.
Wow,
like,
that's grueling.
I'm going to be making mistakes. I'm running on like whatever energy drink I can find at the convention center, and probably like the $8 hot dog that I just bought.
So let me ask you, if someone has do people even have a deck where it's just one type? No one would have that, right? If it's just
very rarely. I mean, it has to depend on the archetype. Like there have been like straight fire decks. Like one of the most prolific ones was when Reshiram and Charizard tag team was really good. People played that with it was just like Ninetales. Like it was just that and Ninetales. That was the whole deck. And so everyone called it a theme deck because you played 18 fire energy out of your 60 cards.
Theme deck.
Then you played Victini Prism. The game plan was super easy. You just play Welder, get energies onto the board, do a bajillion damage, and shuffle your energy back in. And I was like, this is basically a theme deck. In fact, that got top 4 at Worlds.
Really,
If that type of person goes against a water deck, and they're matched up with them, are they completely screwed, or can they still win?
It depends on the firepower, no meme, I guess. Like, not the firepower of the deck, but like if the Reshizar deck could theoretically win because it did so much damage so quickly, then maybe you can offset the trade. But right now in today's format, I think, because that's been like 3 years, today's format, it feels like type weakness is really hard to deal with, because all the VMAXs are so big. They don't do anything flashy, but they do enough damage to like one shot if you have the type advantage. So there's no like Mew VMAX right now is the best deck in the format because of like how much damage it does, what it can do, but there's no really good dark type deck that deals with it. So it's kind of putting the whole format in check, which is weird because I don't actually think type advantage should be that strong. I think it should be like somewhat of an advantage, but it shouldn't be like I sit down and I'm like, oh, I'm screwed.
Yeah.
Do you have a deck that you main the most, or are you always swapping it up?
So my current standard deck, I like to play Rapid Strike Urshifu. I think it's a very fun deck. Gives me a lot of like options to how to play the game. But when expanded format is legal, there's a standard format and an expanded format, and standard is, as of currently, it's Sword and Shield to now. So those are the only cards we can use in the standard format. The expanded format is I would describe it as like a fiesta. You can use every card from black and white on to now, which leaves the pool very wide open, very discouraging to newer players because you don't know these broken combos that exist. Like, you don't know what half these cards do. But I like to play the Vespiquen from Ancient Origins in that format, because it's like a single prizer that's really easy, and it adds up damage for all the Pokemon in your discard. So I like to play like 30 Pokemon in one deck that all can do, like I can kind of deal with everything. Like how I try to think about it, like a toolbox, where it's like, if you've got this, I have this one card, like all this like toolboxy answers. That deck requires a lot of thinking though. So I feel like if I wasn't so stubborn and loved that deck so much, I probably should have stopped a long time ago.
and going with the Sword and Shield set, because Sword and Shield brought a whole new line of battle tactic with battle styles, right?
Yep. Mm-hmm.
It's known within the community as like a trash set, not too many collectible cards. But is it the same with the competitive side?
So I think competitively, when battle styles came out, it added a huge dynamic for the game, because both the Urshifu single and Rapid Strike were really strong. Like they were really strong in their own right. They built a whole archetype around them. So now we're almost a year removed, right? Battle Styles came out about a year ago. And since then, they've added a lot of support cards. Like for Single Strike, you've got cards like Umbreon VMAX. And for Rapid Strike, you have cards... I'm trying to think of what else Rapid Strike got that's just been broken since like day one. Like you got Inteleon in Chilling Reign, like cards like that kind of added to the synergistic balance. So like for collectors, I understand like Urshifu wasn't the most like savory card, and besides like a few alt arts, I think the set was pretty much a dud on the collecting side. But for competitors, it was like, well, this is like the building block. Like normally, like a Sword and Shield style set would be our first building block set, where you can kind of see these cards will be built upon. But besides like Zacian in that set, I don't think anything was really that strong. So Battle Styles was like our first real building block set, where everything after that has been kind of geared to make these cards better, if that makes sense.
I want to know about losing. Anyone who competes, there's losing involved.
Yeah.
Talk me through the losing process. How much does that burn, and how long after the match is over do you replay every move that you made in that game?
So there's obviously some losses that are like more inconsequential than others. Like some you sit down and you're like, okay, I was screwed off the bat. Like that's one of those you can kind of stomach a little bit easier. My favorite, like, I think story that I've told people like throughout the pandemic is like, I really miss when you like finish a round and one of your homies comes up to you unprompted and they just start giving you their bad beat story. Like unprompted, you're just standing there like listening to your music or whatever, and your boy comes over, you're like, hey Manny, how'd your round go? And he's like, oh man, let me tell you, dude, I got completely like, and then it's just a 5-minute like story about how he just like got completely blown out. I've had a couple of bad losses myself. Obviously the higher stakes, the more it hurts. I've had a couple of like regional championships where I firmly believe like had one turn gone differently, I would win the entire event kind of deal. And those like probably still sting to today. And I think those like mental losses are like tough to deal with sometimes as players, but you have to kind of like remember that everyone that plays probably goes through this. So like I wouldn't say like I've dealt with something like at the world's level necessarily. Like both my world championship runs that I've done really well, I kind of started bad and I like clawed myself up, so it felt more like an underdog story. Whereas like the one picture I think I put on TikTok a couple times where like my head in my hands like this, that was like on stream because I had started like super well. I was like dominating the event. Like I had to win like one of my last like 2 games or something. So like I was in like it was in my hands to like make it. And that game I lost, it felt like every single thing that could go wrong went wrong. And like my opponent hit like everything he needed, everything I didn't need. And I just remember like I could feel the feeling of like frustration, like welling. Like I would normally I would play my cards like this, like normally I was like slapping them down. Like it was getting like, I could tell like I was visibly getting frustrated and I was like doing my best to like not be a dick, basically.
Were you about to flip the table?
Oh yeah, as soon as I lost, like I shook his hand, I was like, good luck further. And they were like, the judge was trying to like escort me over to like, you know, sign the paperwork, like all this stuff, like the tax forms to get my pricing. And I was just like, can I come back in like 15 minutes? And they were like, yeah, no worries. Like, we'll be here all day. And I just remember I like walked straight to my hotel and I had to take a shower to cool off.
Oh my God.
But like you said, some of those matches, you said within like 1 or 2 plays, that whole round could have went a whole nother way.
You think about it after, and you're like, dude, if I just did one thing differently, this entire game is mine. Like that kind of thing.
Do you take that as like a learning experience to bring into the next
absolutely.
time?
Like I don't think there's been very few times where like I lose and I'll just be like, it is what it is. Like I did what I could kind of deal. And sometimes you do all you could and you don't have to think too much about it. Like if your opponent like gets everything they need and like they like roll their top 10% of luck and you don't, you're like, well, that happens. Like it is still a card game. There's still luck involved a little bit. Like if you do everything like mathematically you're supposed to do, like quote unquote supposed to do, it's like, well, whatever. One person got luckier. That's gonna happen here and there.
What has been your favorite memory from this whole journey? Do you have like an all-time favorite memory?
Yeah. So probably my first time making the World Championships was in 2016. That was my first year qualifying. You could always attend and you can like watch as a spectator, which I thought was really cool. Back in 2013, I was able to go watch for my first time. And they had this MC back then. His name was Nick McCord. And I remember watching the opening ceremony and Nick did this really good job of like getting everyone hyped. Like he's got the mic. He's like, you guys like all deserve to be here. Like you are all like expert master trainers. They had like pop culture music blasting. They had like these it was in Vancouver, so they had these like dancers come out and do like a show. It was nuts. Like it was a crazy show. And like I remember I was like young, I was like 17, and I remember watching and I was just like, I want to play Worlds one day. And I remember my first 2 Worlds I did catastrophically bad, so it started getting to me as like a player that like maybe I'm not good when it comes to the World Championships. Maybe like I'm destined to just like get this far and it's another year wasted, and that'll start adding up to you mentally. So back in 2018 at the World Championships, I had gotten the auto buy into day 2, so I was starting with an advantage, which meant I had to win much fewer games to be in the quote unquote money. I had to win less. Top 32 is really the benchmark of what determines a good player. You get a ton of prizing. You got a bunch of these cool bags, like a Lids custom snapback, those promo cards, everything. Like that's where the money comes in, basically. I ended up losing my first 2 rounds, and it was like that's a really rough thing because now I'm on a knife's edge. Anything else I lose, I'm done. I'm mathematically eliminated from any prizing. I'm just playing for pride at this point. And the funniest part of that story is me and one of my best friends at the time, we were the only 2 that played this really unique deck, and we locked it in together. And round 1 pairings go up, and I'm not kidding. I walk over and I see his name. We're playing for the first round. So he bodies me. I lose the first 2. I remember I'm super nervous the entire time, and I managed to rattle 5 in a row. So I won. I went 5-2 in a row, and I ended up placing 13th at the World Championships, and that was crazy to me. Like I remember, like every round felt like my heart was gonna like pound out of its chest. I can't like really describe the feeling without saying like it just felt tense like all day. Like the moment like I saw like the final standings, everyone's like, you want to come out and like party? And I'm like, I'm gonna go take a nap for like 2 hours, and then I'll let you know where I am, because I am mentally and physically drained. But that's probably my most like happy moment, because like I went to go pick up my bag, and it's like a really heavy bag. You get all this like crap in it. It's got this like little like poster. It's like, you won $5,000, and I'm like, wow, thanks.
Oh, that's awesome.
And like there's like booster boxes in there, and it's the newest set too, because it's like right when Worlds comes out. So I was like, I'm gonna go crack these as soon as I get to the hotel. Like I want to see what these cards are.
Do you crack them open with your friends?
Yeah, usually
like
we'll
a big thing.
We'll get together in the hotel room, probably grab a couple drinks, and we'll start cracking. Like sometimes people like to keep their stuff completely sealed. I like to open at least a minimum of like one box out of like whatever set I win. At internationals, you'll win a lot more. Like I remember, unironically, I still have like 2 cases of Team Up because I did well at Australia. Like I had to like
awesome.
I had to figure out how to bring them back on the airplane because I was like, I don't have suitcase space, and the customs people were like, we can ship them for you, it's fine. And I was like, thank you.
2 cases?
2 cases, yeah.
They gave you that much?
Yep.
Holy crap.
They give out a ton of pricing, and this is the craziest thing. Now that with all the pricing and everything that's gone up in the last year, vendors will be sitting there waiting as soon as people pick up their pricing, and they'll offer you 70 a box, and people would take that in a heartbeat. Like people would be selling their boxes for 70 on the spot.
Oh,
I was actually about to ask about that, because don't you get like a special Worlds card, right?
Yes. Yes.
Do you have an opinion on people selling those off?
No, I don't care. I like to keep mine because I'm like a really sentimental person. And so for me, it's like I earn my spot kind of deal. Like I was planning on doing some sort of like thing back here with like the card, the playmat I get, and the badge that says my name on it, because I think that'd be cool. But I know people will sell theirs like on the spot. I was talking to one of my friends actually over the holiday break, and he was like, I remember I sold my sealed pack for like 110, and now they're going for like 700 on eBay. And I'm like, yeah, dude, like, you really screwed this one up. People will sell their whole bags like on the spot, and I know people would like literally sit and wait like as soon as people pick up their pricing to talk to them. It's like I can literally only describe it as like the vultures from like Lion King. Like they're just waiting. They're like, hey man, let's go outside and talk. Like let's go outside and talk real quick. And if there's a kid, they're like, hey, do you have your dad with you? Like you want to go outside and talk? Like it's kind of sketchy. I'm not gonna lie to you.
Yeah.
But these guys are like peddling like 20-30 grand cash on the spot to get these like champion cards, these second place cards, because there's only like 6 or 7 like in the world. So if you can get that and then they grade it, it becomes somewhat invaluable.
Right.
So like I know the players will think like, oh man, I'm getting like 10-20 grand cash. Like that's crazy. That's a crazy good deal. And it is, but if you like kind of walk out and hold it for a couple of years, you're probably getting something more.
So would you say you have some valuable trophy cards there?
Absolutely. I sent a couple into grading last year, and I haven't gotten them back yet because the whole process has been super slow. But I had sent them into grading not for any other purpose besides like having them as like in that slab so I could put them in like the little trophy things. And I'm like, oh, this was a pretty good decision, huh?
Sweet.
Do you plan on selling them, or you plan on keeping them?
I'll probably hold them until I need to get rid of them if anything happens. That's not one thing I like keep telling myself. I'm like, I don't want to get rid of anything Pokemon related, but if the opportunity if something happens in my life where like I need the money, or I'm making a bigger move for something like a house or something like that in the future, and maybe got to get rid of a couple stuff.
And then I agree with what you were saying as sentimental value. It means more to you than somebody trying to get it for financial gain.
That's also what I've always thought is weird. Like people will sell their physical trophies as well, like their actual trophies. And I'm like, who is buying these? Like, why are you buying this guy's like 3rd place trophy?
I gotta say though, Fleeve, man, at all costs, do not sell those trophy cards.
Yeah, I'm gonna hold them for a while. Yeah,
that's something that's just gonna keep going up in value.
Yeah, and I know like every year, I think Worlds has become more of a spectacle in the last couple of years. So more and more people have been showing up, and it's become like a lot of fun to like just watch. Like people, they've been putting aside side events for people to win boxes, win prizing, and like going to Worlds, I think is just like a really cool experience for everybody. They have like exclusive stuff at the Pokemart. People will line up as early as like 3 a.m. to try to get stuff. It's nuts. I think they've started putting limits because I don't know why. This one guy showed up from Japan and he had this like big plastic bag, and they had these like exclusive metal dice, kind of like they do in the ETBs now. And he bought every single one. Like he literally filled the entire thing up, and he like walked out, and they were like, I think we need limits.
Where do you think the Pokemon like tournament scene is going? Like, how do you see the future for it?
I'm hoping up, because especially we've added Unite, and I think that Unite will also give us a little bit more of like exposure. I want to say. I mean, I wouldn't say like Pokemon is like not exposed comparatively to, like, I think we're the largest grossing franchise in the world. Like Pokemon is top dog. It's just that people don't know about competitive Pokemon, which I think is a little bit, I don't know. Now that I've gotten an exposure to like meeting you guys and learning your perspectives and stuff like that, it's like very interesting to think about like how small of a fraction we actually are of the player base, whatever. So I'm hoping with the new hopeful online client, which we actually don't have any information about still, whenever that comes out, people will know what to do with their code cards. You'll have a phone app. And then I think the game will go in a good direction. They are, I think, putting more money and interest into it. Even like pre-pandemic, we had some really, I'm not going to lie, we had some really crappy convention centers we'd have to go to. But if we come back and it's in full swing, they pick some good ones. Like we have like the Orange County Convention Center in Orlando. Like we have the Indianapolis one. Like they pick some big convention centers. And I think they're aiming to kind of keep the game growing. And I'm hoping they're listening, which is, I'm hoping, I don't know. I know the video game people are really upset right now because they're doing Sword and Shield until the end of 2022 instead of Brilliant Diamond. But I think not having a Worlds with Sword and Shield is probably what's like hitting them hard kind of deal. Same thing. I feel like they wouldn't rotate us in TCG if Sword and Shield didn't have a Worlds.
You talked about newcomers coming in with TCG Live and potentially bringing in new people to the competitive TCG. If you had one tip to give to these people, what would that be?
I mean, when you're getting in, don't like invest all your eggs into one deck or whatever. Like, don't be like, I think this guy is winning everything, let's buy this deck immediately, and then drop like $400 and all of a sudden you don't like it. When Live comes out, even if you have PTCGO right now, like, use some of your code cards, play online a little bit, get a feel for the game. And I mean, you have to understand that there are going to be people that are better than you, like off the rip. And it'll take some time to improve. But if you put the legwork in, I feel like people can catch up like very quickly. Like, I don't think the game is terribly difficult. I think the really hard part is just being, top like 10 in the world or whatever. But I think the middle ground is very big and you can catch up and you can be a player that can qualify for Worlds in your first year. And I think you shouldn't let any of that discourage you, and set your goals and play. Just have fun with it.
Very, very awesome tip. And one more bonus question to finish it all.
Absolutely.
This is a personal question.
Yeah.
The flea, where does that come from?
Okay, so it was my first ever username back when I was a kid. I don't remember what I made it for. I want to say it was something silly like Neopets probably.
Wow, Neopets.
Yeah, I was like really young. But I would watch, the only cartoons I get to watch were like the early morning CW shows when I was a kid. And so I'd be watching all of them. And I think the show that was on right now at the time was Mucho Lucho. And the flea is one of the wrestlers from that show.
There it is.
So that's where it came from. And I remember, I don't remember what game I put it into, but I like remember I was like, I need to have a username. And I was like watching the show. I was like, I'll just pick this guy. Like, this guy's fine. And I just kind of been using it since then. And I don't know, it's unique enough.
But why so many E's though? Why so many E's?
The other E's were taken. The other E's were all taken. I've thought about changing it so many times, but I'm like, at this point, it's like locked kind of deal. Like everyone knows it's me.
Do you go? And then what's up, Manny?
And then he has a number 1 at the end of it. Just for
someone on TikTok has my actual like the flea with 4 E's. And it's just some guy with like an Indianapolis Colts jersey, like it's a private account with 2 followers. I'm like, I've DM'd him like, can we switch? And he's just like, he's not responding.
Can I have this username?
Can we please switch?
Well, there you have it. There's our answer. Thanks, Flea, for joining in. Thanks, Manny, for being the co-host. We'll see y'all next time on All the Hype. Later.
Bye, guys.
Fulfill the prophecy and watch this video next. It has been predetermined by Arceus. Arceus? Arceus? Ugh.